Have you ever been told to do something but had no idea why you were doing it or whether the work even mattered? Have you ever been told what to do, but no one ever showed you how to do it or do it well? Or maybe you're doing the work every day, but honestly, you don't know if you're doing a great job or just barely meeting expectations. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And here's the important part. It's probably not your fault. So for my leaders out there, this part might sting a little, and that's okay. This one's on you. Not because you don't care, not because you're a bad leader, but because there's probably a gap in how your leadership is showing up, and you may not even realize it. The best way to predict the future is to create it. In leadership, that matters. Because when people don't understand the why, the how, or what success looks like, they're not creating anything. They're reacting. That's not an employee problem. That's a leadership gap. Hey all, it's Tony Volpicello, and welcome to the Career Jigsaw Podcast. Today's topic is one that's been on my to-do list since I started this podcast back in season 1. I'm genuinely excited to bring it to you because I feel it's a true game changer. This episode is built for both managers and employees. There really is something in it for everyone. So what am I talking about? The framework I'll discuss today is called Lead, Coach, and Manage. It's a simple approach that most leaders miss and employees feel. And it's a framework that changes everything. Today, we're going to talk about closing that gap between employees and leadership. We'll discuss a framework that implements the right solution at the right time. It makes leaders more effective, employees more connected, and performance clearer for everyone. This framework is called Lead, Coach, and Manage. And once you see it, you'll start noticing exactly where things break down and how to fix them. For the sake of clarity, you'll hear me refer to lanes when talking about Lead, Coach, and Manage. I'm simply reinforcing which part of the framework you should be working in. Some might think of this as a three-legged stool approach, but I would disagree. That implies equal weight on all three legs and no real fluidity in changing legs as needed. Okay, here's the big idea. Most leadership problems aren't people problems. For instance, someone is being managed when they actually need coaching. Someone is being coached when what they really need is clarity. Or someone is being led with a vision, but nothing gets executed. Here's a word you don't often hear when describing leadership: accuracy. We throw around big ideas like vision, empathy, and inspiration, but a lot of leadership problems come down to being accurate. Accurate about what's really happening, accurate about people's strengths, and accurate about what the moment actually calls for. Because when leaders get it wrong, it's usually not a lack of effort, it's a lack of accuracy. And let me be clear about one thing. This framework isn't just a theory, it shows up everywhere. You will see Lead, Coach, Manage in things like new initiatives, especially when something launches and everyone's unclear on priorities, or in business plan tactics, because big goals fail when no one translates them into day-to-day execution. Or you'll see it in job interviews. Interviewers are listening for whether or not you can naturally lead, coach, or manage. Or sometimes you'll see it in performance improvement plans, because most plans fail when they overmanage and undercoach. Or lastly, you might see it in taking on a new role or task, especially when expectations are vague. So a key question to ask yourself in any of these processes is, which lane am I missing right now? Okay, I want to make sure everyone's got a firm grasp as to what lead, coach, and manage means in each one of those lanes. So let's start with lead. Leading is about directing and meaning. It's the why, it's the vision. It's helping people understand where they're going and why it matters. It creates clarity, trust, and a belief. Here's what it could sound like. Here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's why it matters, and here's what success looks like. But leadership isn't just what you say, it's also what you reinforce. Recognition in leadership reinforces values and identity. It recognizes values in action. It calls out decisions made the right way, even when hard. And it tells short stories that connect that behavior back to purpose. It could sound like, this is a great example of what customer first really looks like here. One caution: many leaders overlead. They inspire with words, but never check execution. Leadership is essential, but it's not the whole framework. That covers lead. Okay, let's talk about the next lane, coach. Coaching is about skill building and growth. It's the how. This shows up through feedback, practice, role-playing, and reflection. Here's what it could sound like. Here's how you're doing, and here's how to get even better. Coaching builds capability instead of forcing compliance. Common misstep is skipping coaching and jumping straight to managing. That's how skill gaps get mistaken for motivation problems. In coaching mode, recognition is about progress, not perfection. It's all about improvement, applying feedback, making a smarter effort, and then learning from a miss. Here's what it could sound like. You handled that conversation very differently than last time. That shows growth. That kind of recognition tells people growth is noticed here. Okay, third leg in the framework, manage. Managing is all about execution and accountability. It's the what and the by when. So this includes deadlines, deliverables, reporting, and follow-up. It sets clear expectations and accountability check-ins. It keeps leadership and coaching from falling apart. Recognition in this lane also matters. It reinforces reliability. It's all about meeting commitments, consistency over time, and doing what was agreed to. It could sound like, hey, you delivered exactly what we agreed on. That reliability matters. That's firm, but appreciative. When recognition shows up here, accountability feels fair, not punitive. So as I was creating the content for this episode, it struck me how communication really occurs across all three lanes, but each lane has a bit of a different communication style. In leading, communication focuses on the message, the purpose, the why, and it really is designed to create some followership. In coaching, communication focuses on skill building, practice, role play, and feedback that sounds like, here's how you're doing. And then in managing, communication focuses on the follow-up processes, the reporting deadlines, and accountability with results. But when leaders mix these up, confusion follows, and when employees don't know which lane they're in, frustration definitely grows. A prime example of this would be if you're told you're not doing something well by your manager, and your manager thinks they're just giving you some coaching feedback to help you become better, but you thought you were in the manage lane, and now you think you're in trouble for not meeting expectations, and when in reality, you're in a very safe practice environment, and you were simply given feedback to improve. This is a good example of how clear and effective communication is key while understanding what lane you're in. Lastly, I mentioned earlier that recognition shows up in all three lanes as part of communication. One other type of communication also shows up: honesty. It is so important to be honest and authentic with your team in all three lanes. In lead, you might be setting the vision, but it's important to be honest about the past or the tough road ahead. In coach, you might have to be brutally honest with someone to give them the feedback they deserve. And in manage, telling someone or a team that they're not meeting expectations when appropriate might be the bitter truth they need to move forward. Communication, recognition, and honesty. Include these in your lead coach manage plan, and you will have a complete roadmap for success. Let's talk about execution for a minute. Simply put, let's talk about skill versus will. You might hear this a lot in your workplace. Quickly defined, Skill is capability, will is choice. If you understand the difference, you then can choose the right lane to be in. If someone wants to perform but can't, well, that's coaching. If someone can perform but doesn't, that's management. If someone doesn't understand why it matters, that's leadership. Most organizations apply the wrong fix because they diagnose the problem incorrectly. One of the most common mistakes managers make is treating every performance issue the same way. When we see the result we want isn't happening, we jump straight to motivation, we push harder, we follow up more, we apply pressure. But the truth is, not every problem is about effort. A lot of the time it comes down to skill versus will, and the difference matters. Again, skill is about capability. Do they actually know how to do what we're asking? Have they been trained? Have they done it successfully before? Skill gaps tend to show up as inconsistency. Sometimes the work is there, sometimes it's not. That's usually a sign someone is trying, but they're not confident or fluent. Yet the fix for skill isn't pressure. It's clarity, practice, examples, and feedback. When managers get this wrong, they end up frustrating good people who genuinely want to succeed. Will, on the other hand, is about choice. It's what happens when someone knows how to do the job but doesn't fully engage. You hear it in their language, hesitation, resistance, or quiet withdrawal. And here's the uncomfortable part. Will issues are often influenced by us as leaders. Change fatigue, lack of recognition, broken trust, or feeling unheard can all drain will over time, and you can't train your way out of it. Many leaders struggle here because of misdiagnosis. We treat will problems like skill problems by offering training no one asked for, or we treat skill problems like will problems by tightening the screws. Both approaches miss the point and erode trust. A simple test I always come back to is this. If motivation magically returned tomorrow, would performance improve immediately? If the answer is yes, you're dealing with will. If the answer is no, you're dealing with skill. And once you name it correctly, the path forward gets so much clearer. Managing isn't about being softer or tougher, it's about accuracy. When you coach skill with patience and address with honesty, you don't just get better performance, you get stronger relationships, and over time, that's what separates managers from leaders. Recognition can often reveal the difference. If performance improved when progress is recognized, you likely have a skill gap. If recognition doesn't change behavior, you may have a will issue. So managers out there, when thinking about skill versus will, also be aware of adoption issues. Consciously or unconsciously, employees make a choice, especially when taking on something new. There are those who are all in right out of the gate. These are your early adopters. These are the ones you can just tell them what to do, and they'll run quickly and do it. Then there are those who kind of sit on the sidelines, and they're waiting a bit to see if this too shall pass. These are your late adopters. Then there are those who have no intention of adopting at all. They're very bogged down in their own beliefs that this is a waste of time. These are your resistors. Understanding what type of employee you're working with in that moment will help you quickly decide which lane to choose. I know I've spoken quite a bit already to the managers out there, but for those being led, you can use this framework too. This framework can really empower you. The first thing to think about is to recognize the lane that you're in. Ask yourself, am I being led? Am I being coached right now? Or am I being managed? Then ask for what you need. You're allowed to say things like, can you help me understand the bigger picture? Or can you give me some feedback so I can improve? Or can you clarify expectations? There's also nothing wrong with using this framework on yourself. You can lead yourself with goals and direction. You can coach yourself through learning and reflection, and you can manage yourself with structure and tracking. Here's another way to look at this framework as an employee. You can use this in your relationship with your manager, meaning you can lead up, You can coach up, and you can even manage up. You can lead up by sharing your ideas. You can coach up by offering insights. And you can manage up by asking for clarity and priorities. The best teams do this openly. Okay, quick checkpoint time here to make sure we understand the framework. Lead is about message and direction. Coach is about skill and growth. And manage is about execution and follow-up. Okay, let me take all this theory and all this discussion about lead, coach, manage, and the framework and what lane you're in, and use an example to make it real. So let's say your company's rolling out a new customer relationship management system to all sales and service people in the organization. And the company's replacing an old system with a new platform that changes things like workflows, reporting, and how client data is captured. Let's walk through examples of lead, coach, manage. In lead, you're setting the direction and the meaning behind it. This happens with anyone who's touching the system. So what leadership does is clearly explain the why the change is happening. For example, we're losing clients, data is becoming fragmented, or our current system doesn't support cross-selling or compliance needs. It paints the picture. The system gives everyone a single view of the client, and it reduces manual work and improves follow-ups. It also acknowledges reality. Hey guys, this may be uncomfortable at first. Productivity may even dip before it improves. Do you hear the honesty here? Now, where this occurs in very specific actions could be things like a town hall meeting or a kickoff call. It's clear with repeated messaging, it's tied to business outcomes, and the leaders are very visibly committed. They talk about it, they reference it, they use it. They walk the walk while talking the talk. If you skip this part, people just see it as another IT system, not a business improvement. Now let's talk about the coaching example in this. This is where you build capability and confidence. This is where most rollouts tend to fail. Now the coaching plan could look like managers sitting with their teams, talking about how this affects their day-to-day, walking through real client scenarios. It should be a very safe space for frustration, talking about what's clunky, what might be confusing. It's all about reinforcing learning through practice, not lectures. Specific actions could include role-based training, shadowing, and live walkthroughs. Managers are asking things like, show me how you logged into that interaction, or what part slowed you down today, and then the training is adjusted based on feedback. The tone in coaching should feel patient, curious, and supportive. And if you skip this part, people technically know the system, but avoid using it properly. Now, the third part of the framework is all about the managed lane. This is where you drive consistency and accountability. This is where change becomes real or it dies. Here's what the manage piece could look like. First, you set clear expectations. All client interactions must be logged in the system. Opportunities not in the system don't count. Second, you review usage reports on things like login frequency, data completeness, etc. And then third, you're correcting behavior. You have private conversations when standards aren't met, and there are consequences if noncompliance continues. Specific actions could include dashboards are being reviewed weekly, CRM usage is now part of performance reviews, there's recognition for teams that are doing well, and escalation when someone refuses to adopt. The tone here should feel firm, consistent, and fair. So if you skip this, the old system lives on in spreadsheets and notebooks. Now let's take a view of this in a 3-month timeline. How would this really look in real life? So month 1, it's very heavy lead with some coach and minimal manage. In month 2, it's heavy coach, and you start to increase manage to get some momentum. And then month 3 and beyond, it's light on the lead, maybe some reminders of the why. It's ongoing coaching, especially if you've got some new hires in there or you need to refine some things, and then it's strong manage. This is now how we work. Here are some common mistakes in this example. Leadership equals 1 announcement, coaching equals 1 training, and management equals one report. Again, remember, leadership sets the belief, coaching builds skill, and management locks in the behavior. I hope this example really brings it to life and helps you implement a strong lead, coach, manage action plan. So to wrap, let's take a look at the framework one last time and take a step back. Lead, coach, manage are 3 lanes in a framework. All 3 lanes have some level of communication. Leading is all about the messaging, the why, and the direction. Coaching is all about skill, the ability to do the job, and the plan to practice. And the manage is all about execution and follow-up, including things like one-on-ones and the use of reporting. I want to reinforce something here. So we've talked a little bit about understanding what lane you're in and really making sure you're in the right lane to maximize effectiveness. But it's also important to realize it isn't all about one lane and staying in that lane. Great leaders switch lanes intentionally. This is going to sound a bit corny, but it's like a 3-lane highway, and understanding when to switch lanes will help you get the most out of what you're trying to accomplish. So if I'm in the lead lane, it's all about giving the right direction. If I'm in the coach lane, it's all about improving capability. And if I'm in the manage lane, it's all about getting results. And again, here's the recognition lens to remember. What leaders recognize is what organizations repeat. If you're leading, you're recognizing values. If you're coaching, you're recognizing growth. And if you're managing, you're recognizing delivery. Simon Sinek said it best. Leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. So next time something feels off at work, ask yourself, is this a people problem or am I missing a lane? Once you see lead, coach, and manage, you'll start seeing leadership differently everywhere. So before I wrap, I want to give leaders out there something very practical to use. Everything we've talked about so far can feel conceptual unless you figure out a way to turn it into action. So I've created a simple grid that I use as a planning tool anytime I'm leading change, rolling something out, or trying to fix something that isn't working. It's a lead, coach, manage grid, no surprise. And it forces you to be complete, not just inspirational. Now, this is always the tricky part of a podcast. I'm about to describe a tool that in real life you would normally see on a screen or a whiteboard, and here all I've got are words. So let me walk you through the grid left to right and see if I can bring it to life. The grid does one simple thing. It forces you to answer questions that creates the ultimate roadmap. Let's start with lead. First, you want to answer these questions. What's the vision? Why is this changing? And what are the expectations? Second, list the ways you will communicate this vision, like a town hall, email blast, team call, one-on-ones, etc. Third, add to your plan the ways you'll recognize the behavior you want to see more of. And then fourth, what keep it real points of honesty do you want to include in your messages? Now let's move to coach. Same approach left to right. First question to answer, what skills do we want to improve? Second question, how will we do it? Third question, how will we recognize improvement? Fourth and final question, when and how will we give tough feedback? And finally, manage. Again, left to right, the first thing you want to do is be clear on what are the outcomes you are looking for. Second, how will they be measured? Third, if we hit those metrics, how will we celebrate? And then fourth, if we don't, what's the remediation plan? If you're a leader listening to this, here's my challenge. Before you launch anything, fill out this grid. If a box is empty, your plan is incomplete. And if you'd like a copy of this grid, text the word grid, GRID, to 240-JIGSAW2, and I will send it to you. One final thought here. Great leadership isn't about being louder or stricter. It's about being complete. Lead with clarity, coach with intention, and manage with fairness. That's how you turn a framework into results. And that wraps up today's episode. Lead, coach, manage, the framework that changes everything. I'm your host, Tony Volpicello, and this is the Career Jigsaw Podcast. For more episodes, resources, and ways to connect, visit us at www.thecareerjigsaw.com. And don't forget to hit that follow button. More episodes coming soon. Thanks for listening. Be safe, all.